Okay, welcome to our shir on Basi Legani, the Rebbe's Maamar Tafshin Kafeh, with going through some of the sources that he uses. Um, and we're holding today in the middle of Ois Daled of the Rebbe's Maamar. And last time we went through some of the things that he brought from the Mittler Rebbe on bringing out the idea of that the Tzimtzum is so. First of all, that there's resolving what seems to be a contradiction that if how could God not have changed from the fact that he created a world and that we say that Atahu Achalei Nivra Ilom, Atahu Misha Nivra Ilom, that it's God is the same. Just if he filled all this place before, and then he pulled himself out. It seems, and then now there's a world. So how could you say he's the same? And so we resolved this using the doctrine of Tzimtzum. And we said, first of all, he didn't pull himself out. So he is here just as much as he was before. And secondly, so what then was this idea of the Tzimtzum? Oh, so we said it's you could think of everything that comes out, comes from him as light, that it and we said that the light is here too. Not only is the light, when we said he removed him, so to speak, removed himself, put himself aside. We thought, initially that means that he put his light aside, and that also is not true. He's here fully, and his light is here. The only thing is that what he did was he made it so that the light is not visible to us. Now, so we are now we're in the fourth line of the second paragraph of Ois Daled. And I'll take it from the beginning of that paragraph. Okay. So the Mittler Rebbe explains further there. It's not only that there was the Tzimtzum made no difference in the source, meaning Hashem himself, but even in the light, it made no difference. Even though there was a contraction with regard to the light, and there was also the light now comes in the way of a short, thin line. So from the fact that it's short and thin, move on. It's coming in a very limited way. That also is a tzimtzum. So noisif lezeh shemitchila nimshach al yidei tzimtzum. This is in addition to the fact that initially came through tzimtzum in the first place. So Afal PK, nonetheless, we also say, I have not changed regarding the oyer, the light. As the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, writes in his Maamar in Derech Mitzvah Secho, on the Maamar Belief in God, Umevi Gamkein Masha Kosov be Mokom Acher be Beer al Mashakasu be'etzis chaim, and he also brings what he writes elsewhere, explaining the what's written in Oitzis Chaim, Shegam ba'oir ein shum shinui, that even in the light there was no change. So at this point, let's go to the Maamar of the Tzemach Tzedek. What's mistake? Here we go. So let's see if that's showing up. Yeah, it is. I'm going to make it bigger. Okay. So v'hinei b'seder ishavus ha'ilamois mimenu yizborech. Now, with regard to the way that the worlds became existified from Hashem, blessed be He, hoidiyenu Hashem yizborech al yedei nevienu v'chachomenu hakdoshim zal. So God informed us through His prophets and sages, holy prophets and sages, K'mesher Kosov ha'arizal, Asher Ruach Havaya Diber Boy, as the Arizal said and was written through his Talmud Chaim Vital, that the Arizal, who the Spirit of Hashem spoke through him, that when it entered his pure, indivisible will to create the world, he contracted himself into a central point. And he cleared out a place equally from all sides, and that became called a void, an empty place. The only thing that remained in that empty place was a trace from the light that had been there previously. The amnom einoi bechinas miut behaoir chas v'shalom. However, this is not in a way of the light being diminished. Rak nistalik litstadim. Rather, it's just moved to the side. And then afterwards, he drew into there, transmitted into this empty place, a thin line. So now the bringing into existence of the kalim, the vessels or instruments, or that were previously discussed in Perek Hey of the Tzemach Tzedek's Maamar, who minarashimai, that is from the vessels come from the trace. These havus ha'oiros, and the bringing into existence of lights. Shehema ha'atzmus dela'el Perek Hey hamislabish b'kelim. These are from the essence mentioned earlier in chapter 5, which became enclosed into the vessels. Hu minakav. That is from that line that he shone in afterwards. Ulefi pshutoi hadavar peli. So that's what the Arizal wrote. Now, on its surface, this is something amazing. Why? How can you imagine a contraction and a removal to the sides with the infinite light that has no image of or form of a resemblance of a body. And also we have the fact that the Torah says, I, God, have not changed. On the surface, this tzimtzum seems to be a huge change. But as we, according to what we said earlier, Bir Loshin Oid Ein Soif, where we said, what does this terminology, light of the infinite one, mean? Or the light without end? Shezehu al haziva mispashet mimenu birtzoina poshet. That this is referring to the illumination that spreads from him with his indivisible simple will. Shalafi sha'ir hu me'ena mo'ir. Therefore, since the light is like, it resembles its source, lochein hu ein soif, therefore it is infinite, just as God's essence has no beginning or end. And that's why the light is called without end. But it is not called without beginning, because I imagine he means because the beginning is the source. Because this light is a spreading out and transmission of illumination. And therefore, the appropriate term for this is that it has no end to how far it spreads and expands. Now it is in this light that it is that there was this above mentioned tzimtzum, and not in God's essence. So then what is this tzimtzum? That is that the capability of spreading this of this illumination to spread out, which we said before was without end. Whoops. Mimenu Yisborech, from him, blessed be he. It had the capability to illuminate infinitely without any end whatsoever, just like God's essence is infinite and without limits. And if that were to have happened, if that's the way things would remain, then there could not come into existence from it limited, finite creatures the way they are now. They would be in a totally different way. And for this reason, he contracted himself, that he will not illuminate he will illuminate only just a little contracted bit, from the total illumination, that compared to the intensity of the total illumination that was there before would be completely insignificant. Just like we say that finite is garnished compared to infinite. And that's why it is called a trace. Just like a person, he is writing something and then erases it. There remains a trace of what was written. But this trace has nothing from what initially was written. All the ink has been removed. There is only just a remembrance, we call it a trace, that something had been there. That's the way that illumination is. So that's the way this illumination that remains is in terms of illuminating in a way that is totally insignificant compared to the essence of the light that was infinite, completely infinite before. Now that light that was held back from illuminating, meaning that it is still included in the source as it was before. Before it was illuminated. So therefore, nothing has changed at all with regards to his essence, because that light that is not illuminating to us down here is still completely there. It's just within God himself, which he didn't move. He's here too. So it's all here. As was explained earlier from the physical analogy, b'mayir shemesh, of the globe of the sun, the light source which is the sun. It doesn't change because whether there's a lot or a little bit of rays coming from it. And even in the ray that comes from the sun, there is no change, because it doesn't even arise to the level of having a name by itself while it's still in the source. Ella kalula b'ma'ir, it's included in its source, as will be explained later. And an analogy for this, mechayus hanefesh, a different analogy we had was from the vitality of the soul, hamispashit beguf, as it spreads through the body. Shehu bechinas ziv al derech moshel kanal perakeh, which that it too is like this radiance, as we said earlier in chapter 5. So when a person closes his eyelids, the power of sight is still there, included in the essence of his soul. He didn't become blind just because he closed his eyes. If he opens his eyelids, he can see again. And even if you have a blind person, whose power of sight does not spread through him in a normal way, meaning it's still contained within the essence of his soul. And that's why if he has a child, that child is going to be a sighted child in most cases. So we understand that the soul didn't change because of the fact that this person's blind. In its essence, from the contraction or withholding or expansion of its light. And this is also understood in the power of sight itself. That he is able to see as far as 60 amas, basically 90, 100 feet. And if we could imagine that the person would have the ability to control his sight, that he wouldn't see more than 6 feet in front of him, so then more of his sight power would be included within his soul and not spread out. So according to all of these analogies, we will be able to understand this idea of the contraction, the tzimtzum in the Or Ein Sof, that the light becomes included back into its source, which is God's essence. And all that remains in the state of revelation is a very constricted amount of radiance, and it's called a trace. But with all this, there is no change in God at all. However, how is it that there isn't any change even in the light? It's because the revelation or contraction is only with regard to the recipients. Let me move down here. Aval, but with regard to God's essence, ein shinui klal, there is no change at all. Because the light is always there still in the source, and it is nullified out of having a separate identity. And it does not have a name for itself. So all of this is nisbayer b'makom acher, is explained elsewhere, the bir ha'oitzeres chaim, in the explanation of the oitzeres chaim. V'hinei me'ha'ayro mitzumtzemes hanal. So now from this very constricted light or radiance, hu shenishavu ha'kelim da'atzilus. That is from that comes into existence the vessels of the highest world, Atzilus, V'reishisa na Chachma, and the first of those is Chachma. Im Yoshe Inyana Bechinas Habitul, even though its whole thing is self-abnegation, ki ha-chokhmah keyachma, for chokhmah is the ability to say, what's this? To be curious and to get completely outside of yourself, be objective. Shehu bechinas hahaskala, which is intellectualization. Eich she'ha'ein sof hu levadehu, how God, there's nothing besides Him. So it's totally in the realm of bittul. It recognizes that there's nothing besides God. V'kein kol ha'kelim da'atzilus, and so to all of the vessels of Atzilus, mikol makom heim bechinas. So even though they are nullified to God, mikol makom heim bechinas metzias mugdar umugbal, they nonetheless are a a defined identity and categorized and limited identity. You would say this is chachma and that is chesed. They're not the same. They're not on the level of God's essence. Shehu havaya pshuta kanal, where He is a completely indivisible entity and uncategorizable entity. V'hishavus anhu al yedei tzimtzum hanal mina oir ve'aziv kanal. And their existification as Chochmah and Chesed comes about through this tzimtzum from the light and the radiance as mentioned above. So this is what we have from Derech Mitzvah Sechot. Now let's go back to the mimer. So I'm going to take it back from the end of the fourth line. As the Tzemach Tzedek writes in his mimer on the mitzvah of believing in godliness, and he brings what's written elsewhere in an explanation on what's written in Eitzos Chaim. Shagam ba'oir ein shum shinui, that there is even no change in the light. Umuva hadugma lazeh, and an analogy brought for this. I want to see what that footnote 43 says. So this is the Likutei Torah, which I did not prepare. Okay, I'll do this directly here. Did I lose my place? Where am I? Here. Umuva hadugma lazeh. And the analogy for this is brought in Likutei Torah, in the additions to Likutei Torah, which are also written by the Tzemach Tzedek. Moshe, from Moshe Rabbeinu, Shoya Neshama d'Atzilus. Moshe was an Atzilus Neshama. Ume'inyan and Nevuah, and also the idea of prophecy. The Beis Inyanim Elu, both of these Moshe and prophecy, hu bechinas Atzilus. They're on the level of Atzilus. I have to go to the next page. I'm sorry, Atzilus Ubria. Moshe is Atzilus and Nevuah is Bria. Harei Hagam she'amru misha chirev beis hamikdash botlahan Nevuah. So even though we say that once the temple was destroyed, prophecy ceased, Eina peir sheyesh shinui be'nevuah. That doesn't mean that there's been a change in prophecy. It didn't disappear out of existence. You have prophecy today too. The only problem is you're lacking a recipient for it. If Moshe Rabbeinu was present now today, Hoyagam ato neshama da'atzilus begolui al derech shehoyo az. Then now too you would have an atzilus neshama in a revealed way, just as there was back then. V'im kain hare eina shinui b'ha'oir. So consequently, there's not only there's not a change in the light source, there's not even a change in the light itself. Elo she'ein mekabel lekabloi. The only change is that we can't tune in. The world cannot tune in. We have lost the ability. There's something blocking us from tuning in. And similarly is something else that Tzemach Tzedek brings in this mimer. And now I'll go back to there. So this long section is about what we just said. And we have a very short piece here from the Tzemach Tzedek. Kimoi al derech moshel, in the middle of the harav shemashpil atzmai lehischakim im tina kotan lefi haskalosai. You have a teacher that wants to lower himself to be smart with a small child according to the child's level. She'af al pi kein simtzum haskolas harav oz. So this Rav is going to start teaching this child 2 + 2 is 4 or something like this. This is way below his level. He is contracting his intellect. Einoi bevchinas nifrod. V'hu mamish elo shetzimtzem atzmoi. He didn't become stupid. He didn't lose all his knowledge of whatever he knows in fields that are way beyond the intellect of the child by playing with the child, by even playing intellectually with the child, but on the child's level. Okay, back into our mimer. So as he brings, here we are, with an analogy of a Rav, a teacher who wants to here he changes it, doesn't talk about a child, but to teach a student. The teacher's mind is way beyond the mind and understanding of the student. Then in order for him to be able to think, how is the Talmud going to be able to receive this as some idea, he has to empty out his mind from the way he sees things. Then only then can he bring out an idea that's on the level of the Talmud. So even when he's doing that, he's emptying out his mind. Forget everything I know about all of this stuff. What does it mean, forget everything I know? Doesn't mean I lost it. I got the whole thing the way I had it before. The only thing is that none of that is relevant to the student. That with regard to the connection between the student and the teacher, the fact that the teacher knows a ton more is totally irrelevant to the student. the keshehu tzarech lahamshich uligloi seichel letalmidai. Rather, what's important is that when he needs to transmit and reveal an idea to a student, hine bezeh ein sechel rav begilui. Then his all the stuff he knows is not being revealed, not in his consciousness. Gam loy seichel hagvuli shaboy, not even in his limited consciousness. Hainu aseichel shebe'erech hatalmid k'moshehu beharav begolui beyachad im aseichel shehu mitzad harav. Meaning the idea on the student's level, the way he has it revealed in his mind, together with his own idea, a way of thinking about things. Asher zen noisein havana. So this helps give us understanding that also from the perspective of the light, I've not changed. The light is not changed. The change has not happened in the light. What is the only thing is that what the Tzimtzum accomplished is that there is no recipient. There's lacking a recipient who should be on the level to be able to absorb the light of prophecy, or the idea of, or that Atzilus should be in a revealed state. The way it was when Moshe was in his time and the prophets were in their time. Okay, so we'll do a little more here. See if we can finish Ois Dalid. No, we're not going to finish it. We're going to do part of this more, I think. Okay. So now the Frierdiker Rebbe, whose yahrzeit was yesterday, explains another thing. That even because of the tzimtzum, there's also a loishanisi. So this is getting very. So basically, what did we do? We knocked off the idea of the source. There's no tzimtzum. The revelation of the source. There's no tzimtzum. The light from the source. There's no tzimtzum. Now we said, that there is a tzimtzum in the revelation of that light, but that's because of the limitations of down here. Okay, so now we're going to take the Frierdiker Rebbe takes it a step further. The tzimtzum is also an inyan of lo shanisi. And he explains this again with the same mashal. Teacher wants to teach a new idea to his student. What does the teacher want? He wants that the student should be able to think like him. His purpose is to raise the student to the same level he's on. But we've got a problem. In order that the recipient would be able to contain the whatever it is that the teacher wants to give, and should reach to be on the same level as the teacher, he can't do it by teaching it and trying to teach her the way he knows. First, the teacher has to contract his ideas, meaning empty his focus of the ideas the way he thinks about them. Totally. Siluk v'tzimtzum harishin. This is the first tzimtzum. In other words, if God wants us to be like him, he has to make a tzimtzum first. And then afterwards, there can be a transmission of a short, thin line. Something that's on our level, something that is on the level of the student. And that idea has to be transmitted not the way that the teacher himself understands it, but in a way that is brief and thin, so that the student could absorb it. But once this all happens, ultimately, the intent of the teacher becomes achieved. That the student will be able to think like him, like he, the teacher. So if that's what the whole process, it's not only that the light has no change, meaning what we're saying before is that the light is fully revealed. The only thing is that it's not on the level that the student can absorb it. But even this contraction itself that we've got going on, since it's the whole point of it is to raise us to his level, that the student should be like the teacher, that he should be able to take the infinity that the teacher has. The only way that happens is through this tzimtzum. In Cain, so consequently, at the time of this tzimtzum, we have here the infinity of the Rav included in it, because the whole point of it is to bring the student to the infinity level that the Rav has. The only thing is, in order that the Talmud should be that, it should be like that, blig vuli, infinite, tzrichim le'inyonim elu. You got to have the tzimtzum. Vimkein ein ze shinui amiti. So then, therefore, you have to say that this tzimtzum is not a true change. It's only just appears like a change to us students. But the teacher already sees within that tzimtzum and within this apparent change that through this there is accomplished that we become raised to his level. The only difference then is that initially this is only a potential, the aschola, and a beginning, the and afterwards it'll become revealed, actualized. So that's how far I want to go today. Do you have any questions? Did this make any sense? No?
It made sense, yes.
Do you understand it? Do you get it?
So far, yeah.
Okay, good. So next time, Bezos Hashem, we will get into something from the Rebbe Marash. This is what the Rebbe is doing in this Maamar. He's taking you through the whole history of Hasidus, explaining the tzimtzum.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to close the meeting? I mean, the recording?
Yeah.